and they will say no payment for the next 12 months. I want you to come to a realization that no payment for 12 months is a product designed to make you spend more than you actually had planned to spend, right? Hello everyone, welcome to T's World of Beautiful Ideas. You tuned into Money Wednesday, okay? Yes, we are still on our series of luxury expenses that the society has normalized. It has made this spendings to look so normal that doing anything outside them or different from them feels not normal, abnormal, feels out of the ordinary, feels like you are also abnormal yourself, okay? So the luxury expense that we are tackling today is financing furniture and electronics, or buying furniture and electronics on credit, okay? Nowadays, people actually buy phones on credit. Nowadays, people buy food on credit. Nowadays, people buy furniture on credit. Nowadays, people buy machines, washing machine, dishwashing machine, couches, like literally furniture and electronics on credit, right? And I will not necessarily criticize them for doing that, because there is a system that is established in our country which makes them always lean towards buying things on credit, because it's a psychological makeup that was established by our government. Okay, and that system is actually meant to make you spend more than you had actually planned to spend. Okay, so if you start to see it for what it really is, you may work your life very, wisely to ensure that you do not fall a victim of their trap or of their system, because that's what it is planned to do in your life. All right. Remember, I always say I will advocate for wealth creation, generational wealth creation. I will always advocate for financial freedom. And I will always advocate for financial literacy. All right. I remember this one time when I was going to a church in Polokwane. There was this couple that said, as they were giving their testimony, that they don't buy anything on credit, whether furniture, whether clothes, whether food, anything, right? And whether electronics, they don't buy anything on credit. And this is the culture they have established in their household. Even their children are taught that kind of habit, that kind of lifestyle, right? And I realized that it's them versus the government, okay? They have established rules that they, in their household and in their familyhood, there is no such thing as credit, right? There is no such thing as you're getting something even though you do not have the money for it and paying later, okay? Because they understood that it is a trap. It is never a deal. It is a trap, because at the end of the day, you get to spend more than you actually would have spent for that product. Okay, that is the main aim of credit, or putting you on credit, or expecting you to have what we call a good credit score, right? I remember this one time personally when I wanted to buy a phone, and they were suggesting and proposing that I can take it on credit, and they went ahead to check my credit score. All right, yes, your credit score looks very good, is very buoyant if it's around 600, 660 and 700 there, right? However, when they went into the system, they realized that they asked me a question: do you have a clothing account? My answer was no. Do you have a credit card? My answer was no. Do you have a loan that you have taken and you're paying every month? My answer was no. Literally, I was not in credit. I was training that financial muscle in my mind, in my system, to work hard to get money and buy anything that I want on cash, right? And A wise man once said, if you can't take it on cash, you don't afford it. If you can't take that couch on cash, you don't afford it. Why don't you wait until you afford it and take it when you afford it? Meaning that if you take that approach, you are developing and training yourself to learn the investing lifestyle, to learn the saving lifestyle, okay? Versus, or in contrary to what the government actually wants you to learn, which is learning to use what you do not have. And this has caused so many challenges in many families, because someone would make credits and unfortunately that person will pass away. They do not have a will, they do not have any money insuring their credit, they do not have any backup that was meant to pay for their credit, right? So now the ones that are left alive are left with a huge amount of money that needs to be paid by that particular person. And if there were assets that the person owned, or assets that the person had in connection to the credit itself, then those assets gets taken by the creditors, because they need to sell those assets to get their money that the person had taken in the form of credit. Okay, so we should come to terms with the fact that what the government has established is not necessarily to the best of our interest. No, my darling, it is not. It is not to the best of our interest, simply because the ramifications of it compared to compared to its benefits are not aligning. They are not tallying. Okay, so you always need to ask yourself, if anything happens to me right now, who will be liable to pay this credit? Okay, why also don't you want to establish and train yourself to be a cash buyer? Why do we need to be trapped into this cage of doing things on credit and not train the muscle of working hard, getting the money, saving the money, and buying items on cash? Wouldn't that also help the economy? I leave that question with you. However, I am just sharing that, we can relook at this whole credit score, scenario and approach and lifestyle, so that we, work on solving the many problems that many families are faced with currently, right? Okay, those are my thought processes around, furniture, buying things on credit, especially items such as furniture and or electronics, right? This also takes me back to, what we learned in grade 9, the difference, differentiating between assets and liabilities, okay, and responsibilities. So there are things that are liabilities and there are things that are not assets, and buying them on credit is an indirect reverse lifestyle. Okay, because let's say, for example, you buy speakers for on credit for 2,000, right? And then 3 months down the line, those speakers burst because you had the music on the loudest volume, and as they burst, or maybe the current was too much towards the speakers, as they burst, you are left with credit for that particular 2,000 for the speaker, but the speaker is no longer there. Same applies to a car. You buy a car, it gets an accident or it gets into an accident, but you're still paying for that car even when the product is gone, which is the car, right? You're still paying for the car. So it may look like the government was trying to establish a luxurious life or freedom for us financially. However, I do not see it that way. I don't know how you see it. We can engage in the comment section. Your view, my view, we dissect this and, show each other and learn from each other. However, if it's an item that is not an asset, do you really think It's deserving for you to take it on credit. Furniture, electronics. Let's talk in the comment section. Alrighty, I'll cut it here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let us meet in the next upload, and bye for now.